I was reaching for my reading glasses on the kitchen counter when I heard my daughter Rachel's voice drift from the living room. She was on the phone, her tone casual and confident, completely unaware that I was within earshot. The afternoon sun streamed through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor I'd installed myself 20 years ago. "He won't notice small transfers," she said with a giggle that made my blood freeze in my veins. "Dad's getting forgetful. Just keep the amounts under 100 and we're golden." My hand stopped mid-reach, trembling slightly as the words sank in. The he she was talking about was me. The joint account she referenced was the one I'd added her to last year for emergencies, trusting her completely with my financial security. I stood in my hallway, invisible and listening, as my own daughter plotted to steal from me. My heart twisted with betrayal, but my hands didn't shake with weakness. Instead, I smiled grimly, my mind already calculating. If she wanted to play with numbers, she would learn who taught her to count. And in that moment, I knew her game had only just begun. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, the familiar weight of the old machine comforting under my fingers. Coffee steamed beside me as I logged into my online banking with steady hands, my 40 years as a fraud investigator kicking in like muscle memory. There they were, clear as daylight, 3 withdrawals from yesterday, each exactly $50. The descriptions were deliberately vague: ATM withdrawal, debit purchase, cash advance. Not enough to ring immediate alarms for most people, but enough to insult my professional intelligence. I printed the statements, my old office printer humming to life for the first time in months, each page that emerged feeling like evidence in a case I was already building. She thought she was invisible, moving through my finances like a ghost in the night. But I could see her footprints in every transaction, every carefully calculated theft. My daughter had forgotten that catching thieves wasn't just my job, it was my specialty. I wondered how far she'd dare to walk down this path before I tripped her completely. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking with age, and remembered the spring afternoon that Rachel had begged me to add her name to my account. The memory felt different now, tainted by what I'd discovered. She'd sat right here at the same table, her eyes soft with what I thought was genuine concern for my well-being. "It's just in case of emergencies, Dad. If something happens to you, I need to be able to help you pay bills, handle things." Her hand had been firm and warm around mine as she guided me through the paperwork, her voice filled with daughter's love. I'd signed without hesitation, believing her love was stronger than temptation, that blood meant more than money. My signature on that bank form felt like trust made tangible, a bridge between generations. Now that same signature burned on the back of my eyelids, a reminder of how quickly trust could become a weapon pointed at my heart. What I didn't realize then was how quickly love could become leverage, how family could become fraud. The pen had felt so light in my hand that day, but its consequences were crushing me now. I decided to test her attention to detail, to see just how closely she was monitoring my financial movements. That afternoon, I moved $200 from checking into a separate savings account she didn't know existed, a small test of her surveillance system. It was a minor movement, barely a ripple in my financial ocean, but enough to trigger her if she was watching closely. By 6 p.m. that evening, my phone was ringing with her number displayed on the screen. "Dad, did you spend something at the pharmacy today?" Rachel's voice carried an edge I'd never heard before, sharp and nervous, like a predator whose prey had moved unexpectedly. She was watching my account like a hawk watches prey, tracking every dollar with laser precision. "No, sweetheart. Why do you ask?" I kept my voice calm, grandfatherly, innocent. Her silence stretched too long, filled with the weight of calculations she couldn't admit to making, mental arithmetic she couldn't explain without revealing her crime. If she was monitoring my spending this closely, tracking every penny with such obsessive attention, she was bound to make a mistake soon. Thieves always got careless when they thought they were safe. Sunday dinner at Rachel's house felt like watching a performance, every gesture rehearsed and false. The dining room smelled like roast beef and deception as she carved meat while bragging to her husband, Kevin, about helping Dad manage his finances. Her knife moved with practiced precision, the same precision she used to slice away my money. Kevin nodded approvingly, pride radiating from his face as he praised his wife's supposed responsibility and dedication to family. They spoke about me as if I wasn't sitting right there, discussing my confusion and forgetfulness like symptoms of a disease they needed to manage together. I cut my steak slowly, chewing each bite while I memorized every word, cataloging their assumptions and arrogance. The irony was delicious. Neither one of them knew my profession before retirement. For 40 years, I audited corporate fraud, catching white-collar thieves who thought they were smarter than the system. And this was honestly the sloppiest fraud I've ever encountered in my career. But sloppiness meant one thing. It would be incredibly easy to catch her red-handed when the time was right. Back home that night, I spread 6 months of bank statements across my dining room table like a detective organizing evidence for a major case. Each red mark I made with my pen was another fingerprint of her hand in my pocket, another proof of betrayal. The pattern was clear to my trained eye. Small amounts, irregular timing, always just under the threshold that might trigger automatic fraud alerts from the bank. I downloaded transaction records, organized them by date and amount, cross-referenced them with her social media posts in family events. The manila folder on my desk grew thicker each day, becoming a testament to her systematic theft. But I didn't confront her immediately. Not yet. Patience is a predator's greatest weapon, and timing is everything in cases like this. A smart hunter waits until the prey feels completely safe, completely confident in their success. And Rachel felt untouchable right now, protected by her assumption of my mental decline. She had no idea I was already sharpening the trap that would end her crime spree. The evidence was mounting, and soon it would be undeniable. 2 weeks later, Rachel grew significantly bolder, her confidence overriding her caution. $500 disappeared in a single afternoon, split between 3 carefully timed transactions across different locations. My phone buzzed within minutes of the last withdrawal, her timing almost comically predictable. "Dad, you'll never believe how expensive groceries are now. Everything's doubled since last year. It's absolutely crazy." I chuckled into the phone, the sound genuine despite the circumstances, picturing her in checkout lines paying for luxuries with my stolen money. But the real mistake wasn't the amount she'd taken. It was the growing arrogance in her voice, the assumption that I was too stupid or confused to notice patterns. She was testing my limits systematically, seeing how much she could take before I noticed or cared enough to investigate. Arrogance is always the downfall of amateur thieves, making them careless and predictable in their methods. She thought she was playing chess, while I played checkers. But the reality was quite different. I just had to wait for the perfect moment to expose her completely, to reveal that the confused old man was actually a master of this particular game. Rachel arrived the next evening, carrying homemade soup, settling into the chair beside my recliner with practiced concern etched across her features. The chicken broth smelled like guilt and manipulation, seasoned with false worry. She'd always been a good actress, but I was finally seeing through her performance. "Dad, you've been so forgetful lately. I'm worried about you managing money on your own. Maybe I should handle all your accounts now, just to keep things simple and safe." She tested the waters carefully, spooning pity into every word, her voice dripping with fake concern. I sipped the soup slowly, tasting the desperation beneath her sweetness, recognizing the manipulation tactics I'd seen countless times in fraud cases. I smiled and nodded faintly, playing the confused old man she desperately needed me to be for her scheme to work.
She thought she'd won another victory, gained another inch of control over my life and finances. But her every word only tightened my resolve like a coil spring. She didn't realize that I was letting her dig her own grave deeper with every lie. She couldn't see that I was letting her dig her own grave deeper with every word she spoke.
The next morning, I drove across town through familiar streets to visit Mrs. Boyd, my old colleague from the accounting firm, who'd transitioned into trust law after retirement. Her office occupied the second floor of a brick building filled with leather-bound law books and the smell of justice. She reviewed my folder with the precision of someone who'd witnessed every flavor of financial betrayal during her career, her experienced eyes widening with each page of evidence I'd compiled. "Harold, you've got her trapped completely," she said softly, her professional admiration evident in her voice. We spent 2 productive hours drafting a new trust agreement, one that would legally cut Rachel out of any inheritance unless she confessed first and made full restitution. The document would be ironclad, unbreakable in court. But confession would only come when she had absolutely no other choice, when all her escape routes were blocked. I was planning the stage where truth would be unavoidable, where lies would crumble under the weight of evidence. But before that dramatic moment, I wanted to watch her hang herself with her own rope, to let her own arrogance become her downfall.
I began studying her theft patterns like a scientist observing lab rats, documenting every detail with professional thoroughness. She always struck before weekends, withdrawing what she probably thought of as pocket money for her social life with friends. The timing was predictable, almost laughably so to someone with my background. So I set an elaborate trap, transferring exactly $1,000 into the checking account on a Thursday morning, then settling back to watch her reaction. By Friday night, exactly half was gone, vanished into her personal ATM scheme without a trace of conscience. I didn't panic or confront her about the theft. Instead, I logged each transaction with scientific precision, building my case one stolen dollar at a time, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. The folder in my desk drawer grew thicker with proof of her crimes, becoming a testament to her greed. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a hunter, patient and methodical in my approach. And experienced hunters never reveal themselves until their prey feels completely safe, completely confident in their success.
Rachel's wedding anniversary arrived with absolutely perfect timing for my investigation. Her social media accounts exploded with carefully staged photos of herself wearing a stunning gold bracelet. Her comments section immediately filling with friends praising her thoughtful husband and their beautiful relationship. I studied every photo with the dedication of a forensic investigator, zooming in on details most people would miss completely. There, barely visible in one particular shot, dangled the jeweler's price tag she'd forgotten to remove in her excitement. The tiny detail was like finding a smoking gun at a crime scene. I cross-referenced the date with my bank statements and found the exact transaction, $247 charged to Franklin Jewelry, the day before her anniversary posts went live online. The irony was so perfect it nearly made me laugh out loud at my kitchen table. She was celebrating her marriage with jewelry bought using stolen money, broadcasting her crime to hundreds of friends without realizing it. Soon enough, her little secret would shine brighter than that stolen bracelet, and everyone would see the truth.
I scheduled a comprehensive health evaluation at my doctor's office, wanting every aspect of my mental acuity officially documented and certified. Dr. Williams was thorough, running me through extensive memory tests, cognitive assessments, and psychological evaluations that lasted nearly 3 hours. I answered every question correctly, solved every puzzle, remembered every detail he asked me to recall. When the results came back a week later, I felt completely vindicated by the official findings. Fully competent, he wrote on the official letterhead with his signature and medical license number. No signs of dementia, confusion, or impaired judgment. Patient shows excellent cognitive function for his age. I slipped the medical report into my growing folder with deep satisfaction, knowing this document was pure gold for my case. If Rachel tried to claim old age confusion as her defense during the confrontation, this paper would burn that lie to ashes before she could finish speaking. She'd painted me as a forgetful old man losing his mental faculties, but now I had ironclad proof that my mind was sharper than ever. And without that shield of assumed incompetence, all her carefully crafted excuses would crumble in the harsh light of truth. I planned the confrontation like a military operation, every detail carefully choreographed for maximum impact. I called Rachel and invited her entire family to dinner, making my voice warm and grandfatherly to avoid any suspicion. "Bring the kids, too," I insisted with genuine enthusiasm. "I want to see everyone together for a special evening." What she didn't know was that I'd also invited Mrs. Boyd and my banker, Tom Harrison, introducing them as old family friends who'd love to meet everyone and share some stories. The dining room table would be set with my finest china, good wine, and served justice. I spent the afternoon polishing silverware and arranging the evidence folder beside my place setting like a place card. Justice, I'd learned over 40 years of catching fraudsters, tastes absolutely best when served cold and with witnesses present. The anticipation was building in my chest like a symphony reaching its crescendo. Tonight, I planned to serve it in front of everyone she loved and respected, ensuring maximum impact and no escape route. The dinner began beautifully, exactly as I'd orchestrated it to unfold. Rachel's children played under the table while the adults shared stories and laughter, the conversation flowing like good wine. Rachel leaned back in her chair, completely at ease, radiating confidence as if she owned the very air in the room. She complimented my cooking enthusiastically and poured wine for everyone, playing the role of the perfect daughter with practiced skill. Her performance was flawless, warm and loving, making me almost doubt what I knew to be true. Then, between the main course and dessert, I reached for the manila folder beside my plate with deliberate slowness. The conversation quieted slightly as all eyes turned toward me. "Rachel, sweetheart, I have something important to show you," I said quietly, my voice carrying a weight that made everyone lean forward. The table fell completely silent as I slid the folder across the polished wood surface. "What's this, Dad?" she asked, still wearing that confident smile, still believing she was safe. The room shifted dramatically the moment she opened the first page. Her smile froze like ice, and the real meal was only just being served. Her fork clattered onto her plate like a gavel hitting wood, the sound echoing through the sudden silence. The bank statement spread before her like a detailed map of her crimes, each red-marked transaction a step along her path of systematic betrayal. Line by line, withdrawal by withdrawal, her theft bled across the dinner table for everyone to see in stark black and white. Kevin's face drained of all color as he read over her shoulder, his eyes growing wider with each page he processed. The children stopped playing completely, their innocent game forgotten as they sensed the sudden dangerous change in the room's atmosphere. I said absolutely nothing, letting the numbers speak for themselves with mathematical precision. Silence, I'd learned during my career, is often the loudest and most devastating accusation you can make against a criminal. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, crushing in its completeness. Numbers don't lie, don't exaggerate, don't show mercy or accept excuses. And in that terrible, suffocating silence, she began to realize there was absolutely no way out of this trap.
Rachel's voice came out strangled and desperate, higher pitched than normal. "Dad, this must be some kind of terrible bank error. These numbers can't possibly be right." Her hands shook visibly as she flipped through the pages frantically, searching for an escape route that simply didn't exist anywhere in the documentation. I calmly reached into the folder and slid Dr. Williams' official medical report across the table with deliberate precision. "No confusion here, sweetheart. No memory loss. No dementia affecting my judgment. Just basic arithmetic and professional investigation skills." The medical letterhead gleamed under the dining room light, official and unassailable. Kevin's voice cut through the tension like a blade slicing silk. "Rachel, is this actually true? Did you really do this?" She couldn't meet his eyes, couldn't hold his direct gaze, couldn't maintain the facade any longer. Her eyes darted away like a trapped animal looking for escape. That tiny flicker of avoidance was the smallest possible admission of guilt, but it was enough evidence for everyone present. And that single moment of weakness was all the proof everyone at the table needed to understand the truth. Mrs. Boyd leaned forward with professional authority radiating from her entire demeanor, her voice calm but cutting through pretense like a scalpel. "I'm Harold's attorney, Rachel. What you've done here constitutes prosecutable fraud under state law, with penalties including substantial fines and potential imprisonment." The room froze completely as if someone had pressed pause on reality itself. Kevin's mouth fell open in shock, his face going pale as the legal implications sunk in. The children looked up from their toys, confused by the sudden adult tension crackling through the air like electricity. My daughter's face went absolutely pale as she realized the true scope of her situation. She wasn't just facing her disappointed father anymore, wasn't dealing with a simple family dispute. She was facing the full weight of the legal system, with a qualified attorney presenting evidence of her crimes. Mrs. Boyd's presence transformed this from a family disagreement into a potential criminal matter with real consequences. And this devastating revelation was only half of my carefully planned evening. The other half was about to destroy her pride and reputation completely. Rachel exploded like a pressure cooker, finally giving way to overwhelming internal force. "You'd actually ruin me over a few $100s, your own daughter?" Her voice rose to a shriek that made the children start crying, confusion and fear overwhelming their innocent faces. Kevin slammed his fist on the table hard enough to make the wine glasses jump and rattle. "A few hundred? Rachel, look at the totals on these pages. Look at what you've actually done." The children began to wail in earnest, frightened and confused by their parents' raised voices and obvious anger. I calmly poured myself another glass of wine, watching the chaos unfold with the patience of someone who'd planned every single moment of this confrontation. My hands were steady, my breathing controlled, my mind clear. It was finally time to reveal the full scope of her systematic theft, to speak the number that would shatter her weak attempts at minimization. And once I spoke that devastating total aloud, her mask of innocent confusion would shatter completely, leaving nothing but the truth exposed for everyone to see. I cleared my throat and read from my careful calculations in a voice steady as granite. $7,324. Over exactly 6 months of systematic theft. The gasps that followed were audible throughout the room, sharp intakes of breath from every adult present. Kevin gripped his hair with both hands, staring at his wife like he'd never seen her in his life before. The number hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore or minimize. Rachel's elaborate excuses shrank and died under the crushing weight of that astronomical figure. "Numbers don't lie, sweetheart," I reminded her calmly, my voice carrying the authority of decades spent investigating financial crimes. "They don't forget details, they don't exaggerate for effect,
and they certainly don't show mercy to thieves. Her husband looked at her with the expression of a man discovering he'd married a complete stranger, someone he'd never truly known at all. The betrayal in his eyes was devastating to witness. Her silence was the sound of her entire carefully constructed world collapsing around her ears piece by piece. I wasn't finished with my revelations. From the depths of the folder, I pulled out one final document, the most important and devastating piece of my puzzle. This is my new trust agreement, Rachel. As of yesterday morning, you're completely removed from my will and any inheritance unless you confess everything publicly and agree to full repayment with interest. The legal document was official, notarized, unbreakable. Kevin's eyes went wide as he realized the full scope of what his wife had gambled away. She hadn't just stolen my money, she'd risked her children's entire future inheritance, their college funds, their security. The weight of lost legacy, lost financial security, crushed her posture like a physical blow from a heavyweight boxer. She slumped in her chair like a deflated balloon, finally beginning to understand the true cost of her selfish choices. And still, I didn't smile or show satisfaction. The moment I was truly waiting for hadn't arrived yet, because her begging, her complete breakdown and desperate pleading was going to be sweeter than any victory I could imagine. The tears started slowly, then came in devastating floods down her cheeks. Rachel's carefully applied makeup ran in dark streams, her mascara creating tracks of guilt across her face. "Dad, please, I'm so sorry. I'll pay every single cent back, I swear. Don't do this to me. Don't destroy my family." Her voice broke on the last word, cracking like glass under pressure. The same lips that had mocked me as forgetful and confused now begged like a child caught stealing candy from a store. Her husband couldn't even look at her anymore, staring at his plate with the deep shame of association, of realizing he'd been living a lie. The children had stopped crying, now just staring with wide, confused eyes at their mother's breakdown. I finally allowed myself that low chuckle I'd been holding since I first heard her voice in my kitchen, planning my financial destruction. The sound was quiet but carried clearly through the room, loaded with satisfaction and finality. That laugh told her everything she needed to know about her situation, and the sound of it informed her clearly that she had already lost everything that mattered. I leaned forward across the table, my voice soft but carrying absolute, unquestionable authority. "I won't press criminal charges, Rachel, but you'll sign this repayment agreement tonight, right here, right now. Every cent returned plus 6% annual interest compounded monthly." Mrs. Boyd slid the contract across the table with professional efficiency, the papers crisp and official. Rachel's hands shook violently as she read the binding terms, realizing she was signing away years of financial freedom, years of struggle ahead. The interest alone would double her debt over time. Her husband pushed the pen closer when she hesitated, his gesture speaking louder than any words could. The movement was small, but devastating. Even Kevin wanted her to sign, to accept responsibility for what she'd done. I watched her scribble her signature with trembling fingers, each letter a commitment to justice served cold. Repayment would taste sweeter than revenge ever could, lasting years instead of moments. And with one stroke of that pen, her freedom shrank to nothing but debt and consequences. After Rachel signed the documents, Kevin leaned across the table toward me, his voice barely a whisper but carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "Thank you for showing me who she really is. I honestly had no idea she was capable of this." Those words pierced deeper than any bank statement or legal document ever could. They cut straight to Rachel's heart, devastating her more completely than financial ruin ever would. For the first time that evening, she looked truly broken, not just caught in a crime, but genuinely devastated by the loss of respect. The betrayal burning in her husband's eyes was more punishment than any court could impose, more painful than any fine or jail sentence. Kevin's gratitude to me was her ultimate humiliation, the final nail in the coffin with their marriage. His words told her that their relationship was over. That trust, once broken, couldn't be easily repaired. But sometimes, I reflected sadly, being completely broken is the only way a person can begin to rebuild themselves properly, honestly. And I could already see in her devastated face that she feared rebuilding might cost her absolutely everything she'd ever valued. Rachel moved out of their home exactly 2 weeks later, taking only her clothes and personal items in garbage bags. The repayment checks began arriving like clockwork, small amounts but absolutely steady, each one accompanied by a brief note of apology written in her careful handwriting. $50 here, $75 there, whatever she could scrape together from her new studio apartment and part-time job at a local diner. Each check was a tangible reminder that actions have consequences, that theft leaves permanent scars on families. With every payment, her pride shrank smaller than the dollar amount written on the check, her confidence eroding with each acknowledgement of guilt. The notes grew shorter over time, less explanatory, more resigned to her fate. Kevin had filed for divorce within a month, seeking full custody of the children she'd put at risk. But I wasn't completely finished with the lessons I needed to teach her, wasn't done ensuring this experience would stick with her forever. I still had one final surprise planned, something that would cut deeper than any legal document or financial penalty. And that surprise would ensure this lesson lasted for generations. Becoming family legend. Christmas morning arrived, cold and bright, snow covering my yard like a clean slate. My grandchildren sat around my tree in their pajamas, their faces glowing with excitement as they opened their presents with innocent joy. When they'd finished with the toys and clothes, tearing through wrapping paper with abandon, I handed each child a special envelope with their names written in my careful script. Inside were savings bonds, purchased with Rachel's repayment money and made out in their names, maturing when they turned 18. "Your mother thought I wouldn't notice small transfers," I told them with a meaningful wink, watching their confused but delighted faces as they examined their unexpected gifts. They laughed innocently, not understanding the full weight of the lesson embedded in their Christmas presents, not comprehending the irony of the moment. But one day they would understand completely, and when that day finally came, when they were old enough to grasp the full story, they'd remember exactly why their grandfather chuckled the very first time he caught their mother's hand reaching into his cookie jar. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. Joe's got more interesting stories for you.